Welcome, everyone. For some of us, if you're watching from home, we started this earlier this morning, which in truth, we started earlier last night, which also in truth, we started about 10 days ago for the high holidays for Rosh Hashanah. So we're now bringing all of this period of 10 days to a close. And typically, we will be doing a different type of service here. And while obviously we miss all of that, what a great opportunity that we have actually, because Yom Kippur, after all, is a day to reflect and to really reflect not just on things that happen here in a synagogue, but reflect about what's happening around us and in our society, in our country. So having this opportunity now to have directly, specifically the time for this conversation, I thought it was a great gift that this situation has given us. And so I thought of trying to get three great people that I know that will give us different perspectives, that will give us perspectives that come also out of their own engagement and commitment. So I'm very pleased to have our wonderful three panelists here. And I'll introduce them very briefly because you all have seen who they are. And I rather use all our time to get to begin our conversation. So Dr. Rose Cornelius. Actually, I can use the back of your wall to say a little bit of your accreditations, but I will say that I met Dr. Rose already a couple of years ago, and we were in the, by then smaller and thankfully a little bit larger group now of clergy, of people that got together not only to connect with each other, but to specifically see and what can we do about everything that is around us. And so it's wonderful to have been in contact with you. And Dr. Rose is also part of our steering team at our One Wake. And she also serves at the Dorcas Ministry, which is like the biggest relief organization here in Wake County. And you're familiar with that. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Rose.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And we have, well, let's go with ladies first, and Lindsay. So Lindsay's here. Lindsay, I have this feeling that we know each other for all your life because you're not that old and you've been here and grew up here in Bet Shalom and in this very sanctuary. Not only you led services or bat mitzvahs, but you also were a teacher and taught our tefillah, I remember, on Mondays and Tuesdays. So it's great to see you. And now you moved on life. You're a student at Duke. And particularly you taken this semester that is already different to do work on voter registration and our campaign and making sure that we get to speak our voices in November and that everybody does. So wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being here, Lindsay.
Thanks.
And Ross. Ross has again been here in Bet Shalom for, I don't know, but long enough to know each other very well. And enough for you to have taken different positions, a VP of community, and now you're helping be the coordinator or the lead in our core team for One Wake, our core team of Bet Shalom volunteers. And it's wonderful to see that. And we spoke many times about how these things were important to you and to me. And it's great that now we both get to be really engaged in doing this together. So thank you, Ross, for everything you do.
Glad to help.
All right. So I have some simple questions with no simple answers. The questions are simple. And what I will wanted to do is, and I was thinking, if somebody asks me, so what's happening in our country? What crisis are we having? My answer will be, which one do we want me to start with, right? We having lots of things are happening and lots of things that are serious and that need addressing. So let me ask you this, and if you don't mind, Dr. Rose, I'll begin with you. So what do you see, how do you see this moment that is happening in our country? What's happening? What are the issues, the crises, the things that you think you have been here, you have seen things before? How do you assess this moment that we're going through?
I think our nation is at a very critical juncture. And I think that factors have converged to kind of heat up this moment that we're in. And it is not just one thing, it's a lot of things. But there are things that have been resident and percolating in this country since before it was a country. When you talk about issues with African Americans, for instance, coming here, it was an issue. And ever since then, there have been systemic things that have kept our being here an issue. How we live, how we conduct ourselves, how we're viewed by other people. So that's an issue. Also issues with women's rights. That's been an issue for decades, centuries. When you talk about environmental issues, it's been percolating for a while, and now the lid's about to blow off. So, and politically, that has also been percolating. And again, and all of these things converge to split us, to divide us. And hopefully we'll be able to come back together. But we're at a juncture now that is terrifying.
And let me ask you a quick follow-up for you. So, and how do you see this moment, because all these issues, right, are issues, racial issues are here since the founding of the nation, right? So how do you see these issues manifesting themselves particularly now? And from your perspective, perhaps from Dorcas, how do you see this really coming forward now?
Sure. Well, we see it played out every night on the news, don't we? For me, it's been a particularly scary time. I am proud to admit that I'm 63 years old. This has been the scariest time in my life. I remember when Dr. King was assassinated, and I lived in Chicago in the inner city, and the riots broke out right around the block from my house. But that was only a temporary moment. This fear has been going on for years, and seeing how it's come to the front with people walking around now with guns. And my husband and I were walking in my neighborhood the other day, and we were a truck with big flags, I won't mention the party, but drove by us, and my husband didn't see him coming up, so he kind of waved, knowing that somebody was about to pass him, and the truck beeped at him, just to say, we see you, and it was to intimidate us. And so we live with this tension, this stress, a level of stress I don't think we've ever lived with before. So, at Dorcas, we see, particularly with the pandemic, our numbers are out off the charts. And our client services director said something that shook all of us. She said, for the first time, we're hearing the words, I'm hungry. And we've been doing this for 52 years, and we'd never really heard those words before. So it's a troubling time. It's a scary time for a lot of people.
Thank you for sharing that. And this time we'll go with the H, Lindsay, forgive me. So And Ross, how do you see it? So I don't know how to ask you from your perspective, just from being here, from being a parent, from anything that you see. What do you see? If you have to put your finger on something that you think this moment is a moment that is different from it was 8 years ago or 6 years ago for you, what do you think? What has made this different for you?
For me, in my perspective, and having two teenagers now, I feel like um, the stress, the tension, the unrest has been building over the past few years. For me personally, I was felt emotional and moved when there was the shooting that happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, when there was the shooting at the church in Charleston. And these issues just seem to become more frequent. And really, I feel like they've been building. And I know that right now we're in it's like the forces are aligning to make everyone more anxious and more stressful with, of course, a pandemic and economic uncertainty and uncertainty with our kids and education and remote learning. These all have been building. And so for me, I felt them. I know that frankly, probably everyone in the world has felt this heightened anxiety, and that's what's led me towards wanting to do something about it, which I'm sure we'll talk about during this hour.
Yeah, thank you. Lindsay, tell us a little bit. So I won't ask you to compare this with 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but something compelled you now in this moment to be engaged. You were always engaged, but even more now. So why? What do you see happening now? What do you say is going on?
I feel like this is the hardest question ever, just saying, hey, what's wrong with America? Which is, frankly, a little bit of everything. As Rose kind of mentioned, there's not really an issue that's not flaring up right now. But frankly, like, I'm 20, so I don't know what happened 30 years ago. I wasn't around to see it, but I've learned about it a little bit, and I understand that the things that we're seeing now have always happened. It's just now we're in a much more like digital world where we're able to see every time there's a shooting, we all know about it. Every time there's like just anything happening, like we all know. And so it kind of like spreads across the country. I would say that I'm more involved right now than maybe previously. One, because I'm not a kid anymore. So, I, can drive and stuff like that. But I suppose I got most involved in the work that I'm doing now, which is mostly electoral politics in the lead up to 2016, when, I had a favorite candidate and I was 16 and 15 years old and was like super into it and thought I was helping a lot by like going to one rally and posting a couple tweets, as many of us are guilty of doing, sometimes just posting online and not really doing anything, perhaps because we don't know that there's anything else to do. And I thought that I had done enough work because I couldn't vote. Obviously, I was 16. So I felt pretty confident in going into the election. Obviously, I got a result that I was not necessarily expecting and one that I thought that I had helped to prevent. But in reality, I hadn't done anything at all. So I always knew that come November 2020, there was going to be a lot more work that I wanted to do to feel like I didn't have any regrets on November 4th, that no matter the outcome, whenever we find out the outcome, if that's in November, or December, or January, who knows? But either way, I knew that I wanted to be in a position where I would have done everything I possibly could have just to make a small impact in the future of our state and country from an electoral lens. Of course, there's tons of things wrong that can't be solved electorally through just voting and politicians, but there's some stuff that we can work on. So that's sort of where I've been focusing my efforts.
So obviously it's great to hear you. And let me ask you a quick follow-up too, Lindsay. how common do you think is your attitude and approach now among your peers?
So if anyone knows anything about 20-year-olds, it's that none of us know how to talk to people on the phone. Like, I've never had to call people. I don't like calling the doctor. I don't want to call for delivery. Like, we just can't figure it out. But for whatever reason, well, because, our country is burning, it has been astounding that there's like hundreds of thousands, maybe I would say millions of young people who for the first time ever are making calls to voters. So we're on the phone all day, every day talking to voters. And 8 months ago, didn't want to call the pizza place. To be honest, I still don't. But for whatever reason, I can call random people all day, every day. And everyone's really motivated to do it and just saying, it's scary. But what's scarier than that is climate change and racial injustice and, just every other issue that's going on. So I think people have been a lot more daring and courageous in saying that now is the time to put our foot down. We are young, but we're able to do something about it. So we're going to do everything we can.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have a question for you, Ross, if you don't mind. I'm turning back to you. So we started a while ago with the One Wake, which is a different way. And I'm following up on what you said, Lindsay, about, yeah, I've been to demonstrations. We met each other at some demonstrations. And then we continue with our lives. And it's not that we're doing something every day. And I think many of us definitely felt that, okay, we need to do something different. We can't just go to one demonstration every once in a while and hope that anything will change. And this is how we started engage in all this One Wake. And I'm sure I speak for myself. At the beginning, I wasn't sure exactly what that meant. All this idea of organizing and coalition building was new to me. And I had my doubts that this will be something that will be really impactful or really something that is worth doing, right? And so I wanted to ask you, because I saw you probably walk to similar steps, right, as we started getting engaged. And if you want to maybe to share with everybody else, what is it that you see at One Wake, and if you still believe in it, and why? What is it that you see?
Sure, it's a great question. It's actually one that my kids ask sometimes, often, like, what are you actually doing? And what I've there are several elements of being a part of One Wake that really help my spirit. And one is, from a community perspective, I feel like our Beth Shalom community has made outreach to other different folks in our local area, different religions, different backgrounds, different focuses, but all with the same goal of wanting to improve, our residents' lives, our community lives in One Wake, in Wake County. So when we've moved from sort of building those relationships to actual steps, I've been really encouraged about what's been happening. And so the one example that resonates quite a bit with me is Raleigh is a growing area, but one of the downsides of that growth is affordable housing is harder and harder to come by. We love it that areas are becoming improved, but frankly, that can lead to higher prices for homes, higher prices for rents, and now residents who've lived in areas for decades and maybe work in those areas are forced to move further away, which adds to transportation issues, congestion issues, etc. So we know that's a problem that we're all facing. One of the solutions that One Wake is working on now is we've identified 5 parcels of land owned by Wake County. These are vacant parcels of land. They're well suited to be converted into affordable housing. And it's a goal that's really a win-win for everyone. It's something that not too many people are opposed to. It's currently vacant land. It can be made into affordable housing. It can increase our tax base. It can reduce congestion. But work needs to be done by a solid organization with long-term thinking, which is what I'm now seeing as part of One Wake. So what that means is they're working with Lake County to help with the funding. They're working with the county to help zone that towards the proper housing. They're working with developers who are interested and can make money in building this affordable housing. So what I like about it and what keeps me invested is coming up with win-win solutions that everybody can ultimately agree to and help facilitate. So when I get overwhelmed by some of the problems of the day, I can rely on feeling better that I've helped make a contribution towards my community and frankly towards myself.
Thank you, Ross, for sharing that. And I want to say quickly, when you were saying, words like housing, and I've been right to some of those discussions, I always remind myself, when we're talking about housing, what we're talking is about a family that doesn't have a place to stay. We're talking about a family, of children in Wake County school system that not only don't have internet, they may not have a home. They're living in a hotel now and facing eviction every day. So yeah, housing, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about houses for real people, for real families that live around us, right? And that's where we hope to make a difference, right? That is something that we can see. Right?
And I'll just add one more component of it, because you touched on it, but another element that particularly touches me, having two high school students now, two kids going through, going through what happens when you're a teenager and the stressful nature of high school is One Wake's also working on mental health education as part, mental health resources as part of the Wake County education system, and not just Wake County schools, but private and other schools in Wake County. And that issue personally touches me because unfortunately at the high school closest to Beth Shalom, there have been a couple suicides of students there, which is tragic. And if I can be part of the solution to maybe potentially help with that's something that I think is a goal that that fits in my worldview.
Thank you. So maybe I'll turn back again to you, Dr. Rose. So we were and I think one of the many meetings that we had in the past, and it might have been already on Zoom, and there were several of us, and at one point I think some of us, and I might have been in that camp, was in the camp where I saw, oh, things are different now. When I started seeing, Black Lives Matter, and that being an issue not only that belonged to the African-American community, but seeing, like we saw in Raleigh, where there were people of all colors, of all ages. And so I was one of those who was encouraged that we may be seeing a wave of some change. And I know that some in our group were a little more saying, well, we've seen this before. And so what do you think we are? What do you think is this moment? Do you see a change happening? Do you see the potential for it? How hopeful or not are you on this?
Well, I think, like Lindsay said, we are at a time where things are being caught on video. These things have always been happening, but now they're being played out live on camera, and we can't deny them. We can't turn away. Before we dealt with a lot of denial, like this can't happen. Oh, I just automatically believe this party because you know, they're the upstanding ones, and we're going to put down the others because aren't they always that way? And now we're seeing in real life, in real time sometimes, injustices before our eyes. And I think we're being asked, what do you do with this? You can't deny this. What do you do with this? You know, when you think about what happened, the cruelty and the suddenness of what happened to Breonna Taylor in her own house as she was sleeping, and then what happened after that, it's still like I can't hardly think about it very hard, you know, because again, this has been a time of brokenness for me. But also, what happened to George Floyd and how long that played out, and how long he pleaded for his life. That jarred a lot of people. A lot of people who had never marched were in the streets, and that hardened me. That gave me some hope, because at some of those marches I saw more whites than blacks, and that is profound. You know, when Dr. King marched in the 60s, it was probably 95% black out there. And when you see a sea change almost, and not only that, in the middle of a pandemic and continually marching, it's unparalleled. So obviously we've gotten to a point, a paradigm shift in the demand for rights for all. And I hope it is sustained, and that we can get some movement in that area.
Thank you. And Lindsay, I have my age prejudice. I think because you're young and 20, you must be more hopeful. And I hope. So what are you? What do you see this? And, you know, you see also, again, your peers, but you see everything else. Are you hopeful now? And you share a little bit of the disappointment of 4 years ago, right? Disappointment is a small word. How are you approaching this? What do you think? How do you see this next year happening in your mind?
Am I hopeful? I don't know. Frankly, I don't have a super clear answer for you. I can tell you some things that do make me hopeful, some certain things that are going on. Something that makes me hopeful are younger people being involved in politics and government and organizing that is outside of government. That makes me hopeful. People who care about their communities deeply, people who've never been involved in anything before regarding their neighbors and people that they maybe don't know, and now they care about them and they want to somehow make that better. That makes me hopeful. Having a government that doesn't care about most of its people, that doesn't make me hopeful. Knowing that as a woman, you know, many politicians don't believe I have autonomy over my body, doesn't make me hopeful. But when I think about the fact that my life will hopefully be long, that's the goal, and that eventually down the road, maybe we'll be in a position where we're going to start taking societal injustice seriously, and we're going to actually do something to combat the climate crisis, and we're going to actually do something to rectify race in America and somehow work on racial injustice, and where we're going to let people of all genders make decisions about their own bodies with their doctors and nobody else, and that may one day happen. That definitely makes me hopeful. But I know that we can't have hope without hard work. So we have a lot to do if we want to find that hope. We can't just sit around on the couch and be like, I'm so excited for the future when somebody else fixes all the problems. There's no future where somebody else fixes the problems for you. The only future with the problems fixed is one that you're fixing, and you're getting up every day excited to work on them and work with your community members and figure it out. So I think it makes me hopeful a little bit to see how many people are getting involved. And I would feel a lot more hopeful as more people start to get involved too.
Thank you. And so, Ross, I wanted to ask you, so you're, well, of a certain age, which means that you have your parents, you have your mom, and you have your children. You have you're the generation in between, right? An older and a younger generation. So when you talk to people of different generations, like you mentioned your own children or your parents' generation, and even when you talk with your peers, and I'm sure at some point you shared something or they ask you something about, oh, 1 week and what we're doing. What is the one thing that you wish they all understood or they got? What is the one main thing that you convey to them when they see that you spend a Thursday night in a meeting here and a Monday on another one and a phone call on the other one, and they ask you, why do you do this?
Actually, it builds exactly on what Lindsay just said, which is if every person had a little bit of action in a way that speaks to them in making the world a better place, that results in the world being a better place. And for me, it's 1 week. For Lindsay, it's helping out the way she's helping out now. For Dr. Rose, it's what she's doing at Dorcas. For other people, they have what is their passion. Speaking for me personally, I feel fortunate in life. I feel like I've got a great family and great friends, and I've got older generation and younger generation. And what I would just convey is that it can be easy to feel powerless. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed in this nonstop news cycle, but it can feel good to do something, something that feels good to you and that gives back. And that would be my message, is to not just tweet about it or not just complain about it, but figure out what you can do and then just do it. And it builds on itself. And that is, that would be my theme.
Could I add to Ross's comments about our participation in 1 week?
Please.
Dorcas Ministries has been serving this community for about 52 years, and we realize that most of the clients that we see come because of some type of injustice. A lot of them are working 2 jobs and barely keeping a roof over their head, for instance. And they work hard. So we realized that we might hand out some groceries or pay rent for a couple of months, but is that really getting to the root of the problem? Could we link with other organizations and houses of faith to do a better job of serving people, maybe undoing the injustices? I was on a call with, as part of 1 week, with the Attorney General, Josh Stein, the other day, and I'll never forget what he said. We said, we're inviting you to our opening assembly and we're expecting about 2,000 people. He said, 2,000? He said, I can't imagine a Zoom call like that. He said, the biggest call I was on was 800, and that was related to a group that's related to you, the Latino group. And we said, oh, we'll have quite a few more than that. He said, well, I have a campaign fundraiser that evening, but I'm going to make time to be on that call with you. There is power when you get people together, and you can get people's attention when you're organized. So I think that is part of why Dorcas Ministries is a part of 1 week. We want to do more than give some relief. We want to work to undo some of the systemic things that keep people in poverty, bound, marginalized.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. And yes, that moment stuck with me also when the Attorney General, because he really acknowledged how, as a nice person as he is, and as someone who looks for justice and is aware of issues and wants to improve justice for everyone, his office cannot have every issue on the top of the list. And he was mentioning and acknowledging how when he was the Congreso Latino, which is another organization associated with One Wake and through One Wake and Durham Can, he did notice that actually put some issues like the trailer park and evictions there in Las Americas and all the abuses there, that puts it on literally on the table for him. And then his office engages. So to me, that was one of the wonderful things. And it was great in that meeting, and I'll share with everybody, you, Dr. Rose, were there, that there were actually some people from that mobile home park. And they were there actually to thank Attorney General Stein, because the differences that they already started seeing after the office got involved. Of course, they were also there to remind him that there was still a lot to be done, and the office cannot forget about it and do something once and keep doing that. And to me, that illustrates the kind of work that is, it's hard to come with a win on one day that is quick and fast, right? So Ross, when you were saying, and your kids ask you, so what did you do today? It's hard to come out. Today, we took 20 people out of being homeless. It's hard to do that, but that's actually what happens, right? That's what happens when week after week, these things change. And now Attorney General is involved. Now the landlords behave differently. That's actually what happens. So it's great to have the perspective of time to see how these things begin to develop, right? And know that, well, we contributed a little grain of sand to that, right? Maybe I'll put you on the spot here, Ross, for a second. And one of the things that is in my mind now, and I think is in our minds, is, so really, how can we make a difference when we are all at home, right? When we cannot go anywhere, we cannot be at a meeting. And I was sharing with our congregation the importance of October 13, which is when we are going to launch this, so this alliance, this coalition that we've been building. We wanted to give it a formal launch, a formal presentation, so that those who we want to hear the voices actually will be there and will be impressed to see 20, 30,000 different people represented here, 40 plus congregations of all kinds, a budget. We have our own money that we organize, we have our own time, our own energy, our own numbers, and this is something that impresses those who are running for office. So we wanted to do this publicly. Obviously, pandemic hit, and we had to change our plans and focus a lot on getting out the vote, but we're going to do this through Zoom, as you were mentioning, Dr. Rose. And yeah, Attorney General was at the largest Zoom meeting and was this type of meeting. And we are trying to get even more present. So can you tell us a little bit, tell all these people who are listening to our conversation, why they shouldn't be doing anything else on, October 13 in the evening, but being logged into this?
Sure. And I'll start by saying that my 17-year-old daughter has been to more protests in her life so far than I have within my life. And so this is not my normal experience to participate in these sorts of meetings and events and organizing. But I find it so worthwhile. And how often am I, and hopefully folks listening into this panel have the opportunity to be something where this isn't some event put on by some strange PAC or something. This is local community organizations right here in Raleigh and Cary and Holly Springs and Wake County that this together. And through building this, we've generated power in numbers, just like Dr. Rose said. And so we've got the Attorney General, and we've got, the Raleigh Mayor, we've got lots of other folks in the Wake County Commission and other elected offices who are going to come by. And what we're going to do is we're going to share our feelings on what we're trying to do to make Wake County a better place to be. You're going to see a cross section of your neighbors who are living around here, and you're going to see we all have the same goals. And then as part of that, we're going to work towards those goals in a couple areas. And this isn't going to be a one-time situation where we are one thing and either we get it or we don't and the group dissolves. This is something that's being built to last for years, and we're going to ask. We're not a political organization per se in terms of we're not partisan. We're not with one party or another, but we want to and we have to work with politicians. So we are going to be asking politicians for things to help out with living wage, to help out with education, to help out with affordable housing. And I think that by everyone dedicating a couple hours to listen to a Zoom meeting, hopefully there's a little inspiration that can be shared. Hopefully folks who listen in will understand a little bit more why Rabbi and myself and others who are part of our core team at Beth Shalom are excited about this and why we think it's worthwhile. So yeah, I strongly encourage just that little bit of effort, and people can make up their own minds at that point. But I think I have no doubt that it'll be a rewarding experience.
Thank you. And I wanted to turn again a little bit to you, Lindsay, and ask you. So you're a Jewish young woman, and how does being Jewish play into all of this? Does it play a role for you? How do you put together being Jewish in this moment? We know that racial injustice, America has a long history of doing it in many directions. Obviously, the African American community is the main recipient of all the injustices. But we also note that in the last 4 years, there's been a steady rise every year, even of hate crimes against Jews. How does being Jewish play into all of this? And do you get any inspiration maybe from our Jewish tradition to anything you do?
Of course I do. I wouldn't be speaking on a temple panel if I didn't think Judaism was somehow involved. For everyone who may not know exactly what it is that I'm doing, because I didn't say it specifically, I'm taking the semester off of Duke to work for Planned Parenthood Votes full-time from home, of course, because of coronavirus. So it's just Planned Parenthood's political wing, I suppose. And I think the best way I view who I decide to work with and what I decide to do is any organization that seeks justice in everything that they do is a Jewish organization, whether or not it's run by a Jew or a rabbi or, anybody who's at any point affiliated with Judaism. If they want a better future for all of us, I think that is intensely Jewish. Rabbi today in his, I don't know if it was his sermon, I don't know, one of the parts where he was talking, clearly I'm not a rabbi, I don't know all the parts, but he was talking about how our number one goal and spiritually is just justice, and that's such a spiritual thing, which it totally is. I'm calling 80-year-old voters all day, every day to sometimes, a lot of times be yelled at or hung up on, but sometimes to talk about their lives and what really matters to them. And how spiritual is that, talking to somebody that you don't know about this future that you want to build together and using politics as one way to kind of build that. So, everything is Jewish for me, I suppose, also because I'm very Jewish. So I wake up in the morning and I'm like, great day to be a Jew. And it goes on like that. As for anti-Semitism and just all forms of injustice, I think that they're all extremely intertwined and tied together. And so by fighting for you know, an end to racial injustice. Obviously, there's tons of Jews of color, so that's also fighting against anti-Semitism. And when we're fighting against any other sort of injustice, like it's all connected since we're all just like people who live in the same country fighting for the same things. So when a community that maybe I'm not a part of has improvements in their lives through policy or community organizing or anything like that, that benefits me because I know that they have the resources that they need to survive and to thrive and all of that. Like, just because I'm not getting a house doesn't mean I'm not celebrating somebody else getting a house, because they deserve a house too. So I suppose it's just like justice for everyone is the ultimate goal, which will help us Jews, but also as Jews, we're called to find justice for everybody, even if it doesn't affect us. So yeah, very Jewish. And Jewish means that you have to be involved. I feel like from the day I was born into Beth Shalom, Rabbi was like, well, I guess we're gonna do mitzvah projects and get out into the community and volunteer and whatever. So, I mean, mitzvah day, come on. Mitzvah day is such a classic Beth Shalom tradition. So I think that we all have to be involved, and Judaism definitely calls us to, which is nice because some people are like, yeah, I just didn't realize until I was maybe an adult that these things mattered. But to me, it's always been made apparently clear that because you're Jewish, you do care about it and it does matter and you are going to do something about it. So I don't know, grateful for that one.
Thank you, Lindsay. And, you know, sometimes when you are in a congregation and you work for a congregation as a rabbi or as a teacher or as a parent or as a lay leader, sometimes it's you don't see immediate rewards for your work. Right? And this is one of the rewards for the work. You know, Ross, you probably helped organize a mitzvah day last time we had it. And well, there you go. There's the reward. Now we see the fruit of what comes of doing something like that. So thank you. On that same vein, maybe Dr. Rose, not from the Jewish tradition, but you know, I think the communities of faith are particularly involved now in one wake, and not because we all are the same. Quite frankly, we're, you know, such a variation, but it seems that we all at one point realized that it's not enough to do great in our congregation. It's not enough to do great in our church. I sense from our fellow clergy who do that we all feel our faith needs to get out of these walls, or otherwise we're not living up to. How do you see that with your personal experiences?
One's faith has to be that of action. I think the biggest challenge we have is comfort, especially in America. We get comfortable, and the comfort feeds into our ability to look away or not become woke, as they say nowadays, not become aware of social injustice. If it doesn't impact us, if our eyes don't look at it, we don't have to be aware of it. But, you know, our faiths unite us because I think at the bedrock of all of them is justice and our shared humanity. We are supposed to care for each other. And there should not be people among us who are hungry or who are on the streets. There just shouldn't be. There should not be children who go to schools that are under-resourced. There shouldn't be people who are targeted by police departments and denied equal justice because they don't have the money or can't bail out or whatever. There should not be in our country people who can rise in politics because of their money. There are so many things that I could say, but our shared humanity cries out for demonstration of undoing injustice. And I think those who are not in faith communities look at us with scorn because they don't see a lot of activity often from people of faith. And, you know, I can recall, you know, in the life of Dr. King, he wrote a letter. It's called Letters from a Birmingham Jail. And he was basically writing to pastors who had criticized him coming down to Birmingham to demonstrate. And he spoke to them like, come on, brothers, what are you doing? You know, where would our creator be in this moment? You know, it's your role to help me to undo this injustice, not to criticize a messenger. So we have to link up. There's power in linking up, and there's I think some of the walls that have so long divided us are coming down, and we're starting to see each other in our own beauty and appreciate our uniqueness, and we're getting things done. So that's been a blessing for me.
And thank you for sharing that. And it brought to mind, and I cannot quote Dr. King exactly, but I remember a phrase, and I don't know if he was there that he said and wrote that, where at one point he said that the biggest obstacle for equality for Black people in America is not the Klansmen, but is the nice white people that stay at home.
That's right.
And say nothing, right?
And, you know, he also said the most segregated hour in America is 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And isn't that a shame? You know, we have missed so much by not coming together. And there's a beauty about one way that just can't be denied. So I do hope that your people at Beth Shalom will be able to come on and just, if nothing else, to see what we are doing, just a glimpse at what is happening. And I think they'll be blown away.
Rabbi, you're muted.
Thank you. We knew that was going to happen at some point. Thank you, Russ. So I wanted to share because, we've been to many meetings, and way before we had to do them on Zoom, where, you know, we see rooms and split in different rooms filled with people. And I remember coming from some of our meetings that we call them relational meetings. And it was a meeting. We spent an hour and a half, 2 hours. We talked about all kinds of things and went back home. And somebody asked me, so what did you do, right? Like your kids ask you, Ross, right? So what did you accomplish today? And it's hard to say, well, you know, we're creating relationships. We're beginning to connect. We're beginning to trust each other, to rely on each other, to share, and this will lead to something. Well, now we see how it led to many things, but even just the very presence on a room where you see people who got out of their home late at night to come and spend their time just because they really care. And you look around the room and you see colors, accents, faith, no faith, you see everything. To me, that was a reward in itself. It was wonderful. I remember coming out and thinking, what a great thing that I spent the last hour and a half in a place like this with people like this. I can see no better place to be, right? And I hope that people will get to do that. And October 13, that we will be there, and even just to see what it is, because sometimes we easily get discouraged, right? Because we hear all the bad news is immediately very obvious and clear. It doesn't make it to the news. I don't know if it's gonna make it to the News and Observer that, you know, several hundreds people of different congregations, races, colors, and everything in Wake County came together for justice and a home for everyone. So it's important that we see it, so we actually don't lose the hope. I think that many of us are not all that hopeful, right? Because we've been burned before. And This is why it's great that we have a new year, Rosh Hashanah, because we can say, all right, let's start it again. And we start again by us doing something different, right? None of us have been to a meeting of 2,000 people to press on our great values. And since we haven't done that, this year will be different because we'll start by doing things like this. And I'm getting more hopeful. And just in this conversation with the three of you, I'm already more hopeful than I was an hour ago. So we have a couple more minutes. So I'll ask you a general question to whoever wants to answer. What would you like to see? What will be described the next few months or a couple of years of how, if things go the way we wish, the way you wish, what's happening? What's happening with your family, with your community, with your peers, with your neighborhood?
I guess my number one goal for now is, before even saying, if things go the way we wish, it's that people get involved so things do go the way that we wish. So that we stop saying later. I think that's I don't think New Year's resolutions are Jewish, but I have them anyway. And so for 5781, my New Year's resolution is to never tell somebody I'll do it later, because frankly, we never do anything later. Nobody has ever come back to something they said they do later. I mean, in like 2018, before that election, I remember at the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll do it later. I'll care about the primary candidate I care about and I'll volunteer later. And then later was like one volunteer shift and I didn't do anything of value. So instead of saying later, had I gotten involved earlier, maybe things would have been different. So I'm looking at my life and saying, no more saying later. I'm going to do it right now if I care about it, because honestly, we all have an extra hour a week to not sit on the couch and instead go volunteer somewhere, or to donate some time or money or something like that. So I would say, don't say later, do it now. And if you want to get involved with something electorally, let me know. And if you want to get involved with One Wake, which you definitely should, and I'm going to do everything I can to be on that Zoom call, hopefully you'll go too, and I'll see you there.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you very much.
And I'll quickly jump in on a similar theme. And I actually love the high holidays because it allows me a point in time each year to do a little self-reflection and clean my house first, as it were. And for me, my goals are to think about how I can be better as a person, a husband, a father, a community member. I want to self-reflect. I want to examine my own racial biases and ethnic biases. I want to learn more, and I want to do my part to be better than I was last year.
And I guess I would say, do whatever you have to do to vote. I'm telling people, don't let anything. If you take a chair, take water, and if you're so inclined, wear a diaper. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long the line's going. I mean, be prepared to vote, because it does matter. And also, if you could embrace even one issue of justice, whether that's reforming police or mental health or environment, there are literally lives on the line. And you'll find that there's not a whole lot of people at the table with you, but that's okay. Do what you can do, because your little bit will move the needle. So, and that's what really counts, and when I'm looking at Black Lives Matter, it's literal to me. When I get in the car, I do have to look over my shoulder at police officers. I do. It's just how it is. So if you could make life a little better for people like me, and I could make life a little better for people like you, I think that's all that really counts.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. And your words, and also what you were saying earlier, Lindsay, remind me of Rabbi Hillel. This is 2nd century, and he said, if I am not for myself, who will? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? Little things make a difference. And Rabbi also Hillel said something that it took me years to understand what it might mean. He said something that sounds obvious. If you're not making progress, then you're going back. There's no staying in place. We can look around and say, well, things are okay. If we're not really active and engaged in doing good things, we backslide. And I think that in the last several years, we have seen exactly that in America. We were, maybe as you said, Dr. Rose, comfortable, content, and things turned for the worse. And it makes a difference. So there's no staying passive. It's either we're making a difference for good, or then we're letting things backslide. And so it's 6 p.m. and it took an hour, and it was a pleasure. I missed my Yom Kippur afternoon service, but this was a gift, and it's wonderful. And we will see each other soon. Definitely, we shall see each other on October 13, if not before that. Everybody, we need to register for that meeting. That's important. So I shared already a link on Facebook for everybody to register. I will send that in an email. Please look at that. And also, if you have your computer at home and somebody else is on a phone, you might want to log in the two devices and let these politicians and officers know that there's more than one of you at home watching them and holding them accountable. So thank you very much, Dr. Rose, Ross, and Lindsay, and Shana Tova. A good New Year to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. And for everybody else who is here with us, we'll continue in a minute with our conclusion of Yom Kippur. We'll have a Havdalah, and we have a few messages also coming from different congregations in different parts. So please stay with us 1 minute as we switch to Havdalah.